welcome to VVork. In this video, we are going to discuss a grouping mechanism called tagging. In this video, we're going to introduce tagging, one of the 4 different grouping mechanisms that we discussed in the previous video. Again, those 4 different grouping mechanisms are tagging, application groups, custom object groups, and custom data centers. But in this video and in the following videos, we're going to be concentrating specifically on tagging. Tagging is a feature available in all 3 editions of vRealize operations, in Standard Edition, Advanced Edition, and Enterprise Edition. It's a feature that enables you to label the objects in your inventory. So for instance, if you want to label your virtual machines based on which department owns each virtual machine, you can do that with tagging. Or if you want to label your hosts and clusters and data stores based on their service level agreements, you can do so. You can use tagging for those 2 simple examples and lots of other purposes that we'll explore as we dive deeper. But before we dive deeper, many of you who are watching this video are already familiar with vSphere. And vSphere actually provides a good entry point to understanding tagging in vRealize operations. And that's because vRealize operations tagging, in a lot of ways, is like tagging in vSphere. In both cases, tagging for vSphere and tagging for vRealize operations allows you to label objects in your inventory, either the vCenter inventory or the vRealize operations inventory. But, and this is the whole point of this slide, the terminology for tagging is different between vRealize operations and vSphere. So let's dive in and see what that terminology is. In vSphere, there are 2 concepts known as tag categories and tags. On the other hand, in vRealize operations, we have the same 2 concepts, but the terminology is different. In vRealize operations, what vSphere calls a tag category, vRealize operations calls that a tag. And what vSphere calls a tag in vRealize operations is called a tag value. Now, it's not super critical that you understand all of these different words and what their definitions are. The primary point here is to understand that the terminology is different between the 2 different platforms. But let's dive down a little bit deeper into what each of these terms mean, starting with tags and tag values. vSphere tags and vRealize operations tag values are, in effect, the labels that we're going to apply to different objects in our inventory. So for example, if we wanted to label our hosts based on their service level agreements, perhaps in your environment you have a gold SLA, silver SLA, bronze SLA. Now I know in your environment they may be called something else, but let's use gold, silver, bronze in our example here. If you have hosts that are supposed to adhere to your gold SLA, those hosts are presumably your most expensive, most highly performant hosts in your infrastructure, as opposed to the silver and even less so the bronze hosts in your environment. So if we wanted to, we could apply labels to each of our hosts indicating whether this is a gold SLA host, silver SLA host, or a bronze SLA host. And again, we would do that in vSphere. We would create those 3 labels in vSphere by creating 3 separate tags, presumably called gold, silver, and bronze. On the other hand, if we wanted to create the same sort of labels in vRealize operations, we'd give them the same names, but we'd set them up as tag values. So again, vSphere tags and vSphere tag values, vSphere tags and vRealize operations tag values are, in effect, our labels. Now, we're very likely going to create all sorts of different types of labels. And instead of having all the labels mixed up and interspersed with each other, we can categorize them or group them. For instance, the 3 different labels that we've picked here are all, in effect, specifying different levels of service level agreement. So we can create a grouping of those 3 labels and call the group SLA. That way, anytime we want to work with these particular labels, we can select the SLA group and very quickly know what its labels are. So to create a grouping like that in vSphere, we would create a tag category. On the other hand, in vRealize operations, you would create a tag, not tag value, again, tag values are the label, but a tag. A tag in vRealize operations is not the label itself. The tag is the grouping of tag values. So again, if we want to create a grouping called SLA, in vSphere we would create a tag category called SLA. But in vRealize operations, we would do in effect the same thing by creating a tag called SLA. Now, to put a pretty bow on all this, again, this diagram here is showing you the 4 different concepts and how they map into both vSphere and vRealize operations. If you followed all that, that's great. If not, don't worry. Again, the main point of this slide is just to understand that the terminology is different. Now that you know the basics of what tagging is, in the next video we're going to do a quick review of how tagging works in vSphere.